Welcome back to another episode of Stuff on Tech. And in this episode, we're going to be unboxing the Ender 3 3D printer. So with that, let's go. So before we start actually unboxing this 3D printer, the reason I bought this 3D printer is a lot of people are coming to me and asking about the Ender 3 3D printer, specifically on the different parts and the troubleshooting that they have. Now, I've dealt with a lot of FDM 3D printers, and I know how to fix a lot of them, and for the most part, 3D printers kind of have the same issues, but there's some things I couldn't answer and kind of bugged me. So I wanted to get Ender 3, first of all, to see how it works, how great it really is, and how from an unbox setup and to print, how it's actually going to work. And so I can help those who may have questions on tech support that I can actually give them the right answers and maybe even tell them how to fix it and even get in parts. So let's just get right into it. You want to be careful anytime you open a box, of course, because you don't know how the company actually packages it. So let's see what we have here. All right, so we got some foam. It's always a good sign to have something there, and that didn't sound too good, but hopefully that wasn't anything. So I have the manual. So what do I do with the manual? We don't need it, right? No, I'm kidding. We're probably going to need it. So it looks like we have the heat plate right here. Actually, I should probably go ahead and grab the manual before I start pulling things apart, before I destroy something. But if I see something that's kind of loose, like, oh yeah, this is the PCB board. The board with, let's see, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I'll just put it out of the way right here. And looks like everything in here is tucked pretty good. We have some aluminum extrusions. Let's see, before I just start jerking, if I'm gonna destroy anything. I really kind of just want to get into this thing and really test it out, so bear with me. But that came apart pretty good. Give me 1 minute, I'll set this behind me and grab the parts as we need them. So it looks like we have hot end pieces. Oh, they gave some supplies here. Looks like a putty knife, and I know that's for scraping the prints off. And this is pretty cool. They actually give you some tools. Looks like some metric Allen wrenches and small screwdriver. And some specialty wrenches, so that's really cool. Looks like we have one on the axis. It looks like the x-axis, I'm just gonna guess. This is some more aluminum extrusions. And we have, I have no idea, oh, filament holder, I assume. Power cord. And this is a NEMA motor, and with the bearing, I'm assuming this is the Z. Don't know. And this is just, whoop, one more piece. And another metal piece. So the rest in here is just some foam. I'm going to put this other foam back in here and set this to the side over here out of the way. So let's get back to the other piece that we had. All right, so this looks like it's somewhat sub-assembled here, which is kind of cool. Saves some steps for some people. And as I speak about this 3D printer, I used to manufacture 3D printers, and I've actually had 4 designs out there. 2 I've collaborated with people on. 1 was completely my idea, and 1 was kind of like a hybrid between a bunch of people. So I have experience in building 3D printers. So we're going to see how this goes compared to what I'm used to. And that's the power supply. So let's see. This just looks like some packaging. Before I go rip anything up, some binder clips that were kind of loose in here. That's okay. I have an idea what the binder clips are for. Normally they're for the bed, but I'm not quite sure about that. It's just an assumption. And I like this plate here. So let's see. Oh man, I probably should go ahead and grab that manual, but you know what, I don't need this packaging. I don't have a razor knife, but I tell you what, I'm just gonna rip this packaging apart because I really don't care about it. So, oh, that's cool. So here's the main body, I would say. Now this looks like the y-axis. Let me go ahead and put this down. So this being the y-axis, and it looks like the extruder. And these other parts, that looks like the X motor and Z, I'm gonna assume. Make sure there's nothing else in there. Okay, nope. All right, so let's get some of these things out of the way here. So that should be everything so far, except for the manual that I threw. So let's grab this, because it's probably not a good idea just to toss the manual. Even, I don't want to be too prideful here, even though I know some things about 3D printers. Every product. Every 3D printer is different. And these guys, from what I understand, are really good. I'm going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. And approach this from a completely unbiased point, like I don't have any experience with 3D printers. So we'll see. So here's the instructions. Let me get that off that plate because that's probably not a good idea. So this guide is for the Ender 3 3D printer. Select the correct voltage. And this is set to 230. I am in the US and I need to switch this to 115. That would not have been good. So check that first thing. In each step, what I like about this manual is it's actually giving you the part list and putting a number back to the part to where it correlates to the image. A lot of companies don't do this. They just kind of give you halfway done stuff, and that really doesn't work out. Kind of guess and maybe look at the parts. And if people don't know anything about not just 3D printers, but mechanical things, putting together a bookshelf or stuff like that, you know, it can really get lost. So I really like this so far, what I'm seeing. So the first step, we're just going to get right into it, is basically telling us to, let's see, number 15, number 16, number 2. That basically means the main plate is what I'm looking at here. But let's see if we orient this the right way. Not sure. What is number 2? So this is correct. So do I have it the correct way? That is what I need to figure out here. So I'm going to assume with all the wires, actually no. So this part actually needs to face me. So you want most of the wires, it appears, to point towards the back, which makes sense. You don't want too many wires in the front of a machine. And the ribbon cable, be careful that you don't pull the cables apart or rip them, because then it's not going to be fun trying to repair those things. So I'm going to make sure my wires are free and not binding or catching on anything here. So it looks like I have it oriented the right way according to the instruction. So 15 and 16. So it looks like we're going to have to get right into these aluminum extrusions. I don't know what this rod's for yet. Let's check it out. All right. I just throw the trash on the ground because it doesn't matter. Let's see. These are wrapped pretty good. It's like my arch enemy. It's saran wrap. I hate this stuff. It's good for packaging. Oh my gosh. All right. What I really like, what I see already about these aluminum extrusions, is the pre-drilled holes. You don't see that a lot of times. You don't see pre-drilled holes and people are having to measure and guess and mess it up, really. And I've been there and done that. So here we go. I don't know if I should open them all, but I'm going to do it anyway while I'm doing this one. So let's just throw this trash over there where I put the box. Goodness gracious. You know, there's a faster way to do this. Of course, be careful you don't scratch your aluminum extrusions, but I just go too fast sometimes, as you can tell by the way I talk sometimes, because I'm just ready to get into it. Most people that buy them, oh, that's pretty neat. So these are aluminum extrusions, and forgive me for not remembering, but these are dual. I'm trying to remember if these must be 40 by 20s, I'm guessing. So it looks like 15 and 16 are going to be, okay, this. And so they're saying that the ones I just showed you that are basically the 40 by 20s. I'm assuming it's 40 by 20. Do I have a tape measure? I have a tape measure. Let's see. We'll measure it because I'm curious now. Yep, 40 by 20. So pretty good guess. Anyway, so they're trying to tell me to shorter. Which shorter and longer mean? Longer holes? Shorter, longer what? Okay, it looks like 16 goes here. It looks like they're kind of referring to these holes. I'm gonna guess. I hope I'm guessing right here. And it looks like there's some holes here. Oh, longer. Okay, longer dimension. That would help. Longer dimension from end to holes goes to the right side towards the top. Shorter dimension from the bottom to the holes on the right side. Hope I'm not sounding too cheesy here, but I want to make sure I get this right. I do not like redoing things. It happens, but it's important to pay attention to instructions. All right, so they're telling me I need to get some bolts. And the bolts are, let's see. not in there. Try not to get too distracted as I see some things here I like. Already see a flash drive and I kind of want to get into it. Ouch. Careful. What was that? Oh, okay. So it's another tool, which is neat. Some wire clippers. That kind of hurt. I guess I should slow down just a wee bit, but I don't want to make the video too long and too boring. So let's see. So the cool thing, really cool thing that I like right now is the prepackaged bolts here. That is really cool. Instead of slamming them all in a package and good luck going trying to figure out which size is which size, they actually divide these up. And trust me, if you never put anything together before, that's really neat, because a lot of companies that I've gotten things from before just don't do that. So they're telling me I need to get some bolts. 4 pieces, M5 by 45. They even labeled them. Good job, guys. So M5 by 45. Let's get these other bolts out of the way. And since they gave me this handy dandy tool, I'm just going to use it. Let's see what we have. They said I need 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Looks like there's one extra. Is it extra because I might drop one and lose it and it bounce from here to across the world? Don't know. All right. So you flip it up, because this is going to be the Z-axis. Careful not to scratch anything. And from the bottom, which I'll show you here, I'm going to flip this completely over very carefully. So these 2 bolts go through the bottom here, as you can see. Now, I'm going to see if I can move. Well, be very careful doing this, because I don't want to bust that Y-axis, the motor, or anything. So I'm going to do one side just to be safe. So it looks, the 2 holes at the bottom go to the left side, which they're calling number 16. So the best way to do this when you're doing things is start one and start the other and slowly turn. Now, anytime you're trying to turn bolts, if you don't know this already, you want to be very careful when you start them and hope they go in kind of easy. If it takes a lot of force in the beginning and you're not supposed to, you probably cross-threaded them, which means you're really going to screw things up if you keep going forward with it. So I'm gently doing one at a time here. I am not trying to hurry, because I do not feel like re-drilling holes and tapping holes. So it seems like they're both going in okay. Now I'm going to grab a tool here, because it looks like I already need one, and I'll leave mine over there, but I'll have them if I need them. So these are M5, so I'm going to grab, I'm assuming the biggest, yep, the biggest Allen wrench here, metric, and start turning a little bit, and I'm going to do 1 bolt at a time, not to rush this. And as you can see, I'm going to snug them for now, not over tight, because you don't want to over tighten something unless you're sure you need to over tighten it. So there is one side. Now we're going to do the other side, which they're calling to be number 15. So we're going to take 2 more of the metric bolts, M5 by 45s, slide them through the bottom, and then we're going to come through, and again, make sure the holes are facing you, the shorter distance, not the shorter hole, because that doesn't make any sense, but from the instructions it says shorter. The shorter dimension, which means the distance from the hole that's closest to the bottom, is shorter, and you have a longer distance from the top to the hole at the top. So, if that makes any sense. So we're going to take, we have the bolt started, and I'm going to slowly, let's see, hold this up a little bit, take some pressure off of it, so I'm not, making sure I'm not cross-threading it. I'm going to go back and forth and slowly tighten these. Let's see. Whoops. And one thing when you're tightening bolts like this is Allen wrenches, or whatever you want to call them, socket sets. There's so many different names. I call them Allen wrenches. You're turning them and you're going pretty good, and boom, they fly across the room, and then you have to go find out if they bounce from here to China. No pun intended. All right, so there we go. That seems to be there. Oh, watch the cables. Again, careful. So that was step 1. All right, hey, going good so far. Okay, so it's telling me to grab the power supply. If you don't understand what the numbers mean they go back right back to the instruction manual, and they'll point to you and tell you number 3, power supply. Common sense, I hope. So I have my bolts. What is this? What is this number 1? Oh wow, LCD screen. All right, so number 1 is the LCD screen. So first step is, again, the instructions tell you to check your voltage, and if you haven't done that already on this power supply, on this side, make sure you switch whether you're doing 115 or 230 volts. Very, 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 very important. So mine is at 115 volts, which is what I need. So basically we're going to mount this here. The question I have, okay, so there's some pre-drill holes that should match up, and the bolts that we're going to use to mount this are the M4x20s. So take the M4x20s, we're going to stick them both in first, and then we're going to have to get another tool, another Allen wrench. Oh, I hate it when I mess up like that. All right, let's see. So I'm going to lift this first one, and this is probably another good time to mention about if you don't have any experience with electronics or mechanical things as far as bolting and stuff like that. When you start a bolt, I'll say it again, it's worth repeating, is when you start a bolt, make sure that it's nice and smooth, that it goes in not too tight. One of these feels a little bit tight, and I'm a little concerned that I'm cross-threading it. So if you're not sure when you go to tighten a bolt or a screw or something like that, anything you're doing, mostly bolts, you want to make sure that you line it up properly with the next hole, or you'll have a lot of issues. So that seems to be a little bit better. If you cross-thread it, you know, something like this may not be too detrimental, meaning it may not totally destroy what you're doing, because these are just mounting holes. But in some cases, when you're doing certain things, whoops, told you that was going to happen. These things tend to fly everywhere. All right, so let's take that. That feels a lot smooth. A lot more smooth, or smoother, I should say. So let's take this one. This one's a little tight, and honestly, it's okay. There we go. It starts off a little tight, and then it just kind of goes in, and at the end it's finished. Don't over tighten these. Let's just set them aside for now. Okay, so that was in step 2. So I also need M5x8s. And I thought I just had them. Don't need that. M5x8s. Gonna open the pack with the little tool they gave me. Might as well put it to use. I only need 2 M5x8s. So, and this is gonna be for the LCD screen. Oh, come on. Come on, come on. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so the LCD screen goes on the right front side. That's kind of cool. It kind of tucks in there. So it requires 2 bolts, and kind of common sense here. So they are cat a corner from each other, diagonal, however you want to, whatever terminology you want to use there. Let's see. Oh, come on. And sometimes bolts can be a little bit of a pain in you know what. So, got it. All right, so let's get the proper tool here. Of course I didn't. So these are M4s, correct? No, M5s. Wait a minute. Nope. Okay. There we go. So I'm getting one close to tight, getting the other one kind of far off here. We're going to go ahead and get this thing. And almost there. All right, I'm gonna give it a little bit of a tug, nice and secure. So step 3. So what part? Number 9. So we're gonna look at number 9. Number 9 appears to be, let's see. Let's see if we can match that up with what they're telling me. Looks like an in-stop switch. Number 9 appears to be the in-stop switch. So, yep. So in-stop, mount, and switch. See how that works? When the axis goes to it, it's going to trigger this, and that'll stop that axis. It's a limiter. End stop, limiter. There's all kind of words you can use in this stuff. Okay, so they're showing me face the machine this way, and I'm going to have to loosen the bolts here, and they're showing me what's the right and wrong way for exactly what here. They're showing you which way is the correct way to slide it in the rails. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that the end stop faces up. So if that makes any sense, we're going to take this end stop and flip it this way. So this is up. And we're going to take these nuts, we're going to slide them. And basically what they're trying to tell you in this image is these nuts can go long way or short way. And that means that you want to take the nut and turn it to where the long way is going with the rail. If you do it this way, what's going to happen, you'll see it, I'm sure. It's just going to fall out on you. So you want to take and loosen these a little bit, not all the way, because you don't want to lose these inside the rails. Turn them sideways, and we're going to get one to fit, and we're going to slowly and carefully get the other one a little bit loose till it fits. And it looks like we're going to slide this all the way down to about, what does that say, 32 millimeters? Whatever. I'm going to leave it a little bit loose. Not too loose. I don't want to lose the nuts on this thing, but I'm going to go ahead and just a little bit, just barely touch it so it doesn't go anywhere. So step 4. All right, step 4 is taking the motor, number 8. Number 8 appears to be the Z motor. And what exactly are they trying to tell me? Okay, step 4, turn the machine around. All right, so this is when I wish I would have had my turntable set up to twist it back and forth instead of walking all the way around. That would have helped a lot. But whatever, it is what it is. So let's turn this. All right, well, losing tools, of course. So now we're in the back. So now we have it turned the correct way. Step 4, number 1. Wait. Oh, 1 bolt. Not sure. Oh, 1 M4 by 18 bolt. Let's get rid of this stuff we don't need. M4 by 18. We only need 1. All right, M4 by 18, number 17. Oh, duh, it's the Z-rod. So, didn't know what this was earlier. Z-rod. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so it has this good protector on it. Very cool to see. So here's your Z-rod, and here 17 Z-rod, number 8 is the Z motor, and you're going to need 1 M4 by 18 bolt. And it's trying to tell me that, let's see. Do I put the rod in first? Not quite sure. I would say yes. I am going to anyway. And this is when I should probably tell you that most motors, threaded rods like this, have grease on them to keep them nice and greased up, especially when you're printing. You don't want those things to get dry, and if that happens. Okay, so the top bolt you want to loosen. I should show you this. And this top bolt, leave this one alone. This one's actually mounted to the Z motor. So do not touch this bottom bolt here. Do not touch this. The top one is the one you want to loosen. That way you can slide the rod in. So I'm going to fit it in there. I'm going to now tighten. I'm going to tighten that really snug. And hopefully I didn't get ahead of myself, but whatever. Okay, so now, where do I put this? I'm not quite sure. So let's see. There's 2 holes. It goes there. M4 by 18. We need 2 of them. So get my second one. And it looks like that's the end of the M4 by 18. It's always cool when you're in a project to actually see the bolts that are provided go away, because it means you're getting closer, as long as you didn't lose any. So it looks like we're going to take both of these bolts and stick them in here, because this is going to get mounted to the Z-axis. So you're going to need the proper tool. If you got them close by you, it's a good idea to keep them right there. So this is going to be a little tricky, it looks like, to get these to fit. So again, we're going to line 1 bolt up and make sure it's a little bit in there, and that one is, before I really tighten it. We're going to get the second one, and I'm just going to kind of turn the bolt with the Allen wrench, metric wrench, whatever you want to call it, socket head, so that way this will actually line up. And so it looks like they both kind of did. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten them. Well, I'm going to do one at a time till they get close to being tightened, because this is very important to get your Z-axis perfectly perpendicular with these rods. I'm sorry, with these rails. So that one seems to be, and that one seems to be. If I need to adjust it later, I can. I sure hope. I'm assuming. So at this point, you probably should have did something I didn't and have a rag to wipe this grease on. And that's something I'm going to do before I touch any electronics. So, step 5. Hey, we're getting there. Step 5 appears to be the Y-axis. So we're going to need number 6. Number 6. I'm sorry, this is the X. It can't be the Y-axis. The Y-axis is here. This is the X-axis. So we're going to go ahead and follow the instructions to the best of our ability here. Number 18 is, so let's see if these things are any different. They are. All right. So how do I know which one's 18? 18 is the one with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes in it. Correct? The other one has 4 holes in it. And I'm going to peek ahead really, really quick. Yep, okay. Number 8. 18, sorry. Has 6 holes in it. Aluminum extrusion with 6 holes in it. Number 6. Part number 6 is the one with 2 motors already mounted on it and a lot of hardware there. What's really cool is they actually did a lot of this for you. That's really neat. I don't have to go figure out a lot more things. So we're going to need M4 by 16. M4 by 16s. Here we go. So we're going to get these bolts. So we're going to get 2 M4 by 16 bolts. And it appears we need to get, what is this part? Is there a name for this thing? Nope. Okay. Well, maybe there is. 2 pieces. Okay, here's the nozzle. That's really neat. Okay. All right, lost my spot. So we have this extruder tube mount. That's basically what I'm looking at right here on this step 5. So they're telling me to hold this guy, girl, whatever you want to call it. It's up to you. Thing. How about this thing, this part, this piece? And this is going to have to go into, trying to orient this thing the right way that they have it, and I don't think I'm getting it. Like this? Oh yeah, there we go. So basically, if you look at this motor on top, the motor cable that fits in here, it's the way I'm holding it. The extruder motor appears to be on the bottom. This thing actually says back, so I don't know as far as this picture. In the end, I have no idea which way this thing's going to go. Okay, so they're telling me to do what? I'm not quite sure what they're trying to tell me here. Green piece. What's a green piece? I don't see a green piece. Okay. Or is green just pointing to? I see. So green just basically means it's not necessarily the piece. I have no idea where this is going to go. It goes here. Okay. So this extruder. So this is the extruder on this machine. And you have the plunger, spring arm, whatever you want to call it. I'm just used to call it plunger. And this is where the tube's actually going to fit in. And there is a fitting here that you're going to have to turn. Now I'm just going to hand tighten it for now, just to be safe. And it also, I need 2 M by 16 bolts. And which way does this go? Let's see here. Okay. Is that correct? So these bolts are going to go, oh yeah. So here's what's really neat. So if you notice, they've already pre-drilled some holes to match, and they also dug out some section of this aluminum extrusion for this nut where it's going to sit. So that kind of gives me an idea. So let's see if I'm going to have to go in with the bolts there. Let's see if they fit. Nope. So I was almost right. So what you have to look for here, the bolts that match plus this cutout is going to go on this side. So that way when you slide this part on here, and I think I probably should have put this here first. Is that right? Because they're actually doing that. Yeah, okay. So this is going to, uh-oh, lost a bolt. It's going to be a little bit tricky. Let's see. This is actually a lot tricky, not just a little tricky. All right, let me slide this out of the way because I need some more table space. Let's see. We're going to slide that there. So this seems to be a little tricky here. Let's see. Not quite sure. Okay, so I was right. So the bolts to mount this go inside here. This is going to be pretty hard to see. I think I'll have a better time showing you with the manual. This part is what I'm trying to do. Step 5. See that? I'm going to get these as much as I can with my hand first, because some of the problems when you're doing in tight spaces, when you're working with bolts like this, you can barely get your fingers in. The tools don't have a whole lot of room either, and your finger is a lot more flexible. And if you have smaller hands, you know, like kids putting these things together, you know, it can really help because they can get their hands in there and help you. That's probably what I should have did. I probably should have got some students to help me put this together, but they're out of school right now, so let's see. All right, so once I have those somewhat hand tight, I am going to reach in there with this Allen wrench, and I'm going to tighten one almost all the way. So here's a tip that I just figured out as I was struggling with this. There's some holes, and this is awesome, and I wish this would have been in instructions, but it is okay. Should have been me to kind of figure out. If they would have put the tool in instructions kind of pointing to it, I would have kind of figured it out. But you can actually put the Allen wrench in here and tighten them, and that would have probably saved me about 5 minutes of trouble, but that's okay. I just didn't pay attention enough. I'm just trying to rush, trying to get this. I'm used to doing it a certain way. But what's really cool is you just insert those in there and check it out. They go in there very quick. So, and they're tight. There we go. So that was that step. So step 6, looks like we're gonna put this thing all the way together, or very close to it. We're gonna need some more parts. So it looks like I need to orient this with the extruder, which way? Like this. Yep. And I am going to grab the x-axis. I'm going to grab 2 M4x16 bolts. 2 more, 1 left. Let's put that back in the bag so we don't lose it. And it appears I'm going to actually get the extruder mount onto the aluminum extrusion. And this is where you want to be very, very careful. For one, you don't want to break any wires, and you don't want to put it on backwards. So it looks like what we're going to have here, matching the picture, is the picture we have shows I'm having the extruder face up with the Z to the right, with the part we put on facing to the left. As I'm looking at it, we're going to take the extruder mount with the rollers, roll it this way, and then that should just set it down, put it on there. Looks like there is something I can do here. What is that? Looks like I need to, is that a belt? Yep. I see. That's really cool. So it looks like we're going to put the other axis How's this gonna go? Let's see. Mounts like this. Yep. Okay. So the two M4 by 16 bolts, as I put on this other mounting bracket, is gonna go line up with the holes on this side. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let's see, we're gonna start one. Kind of make sure we have it before we get the other one in. Let's see. That's an M4, so we're going to M4 tool. And again, we're going to get one a little bit tight. Then we're going to get the other one started close to being there. And we're going to tighten it at the end. So to understand which way this extruder was supposed to go, in the instructions, they're showing you, if you look on the bottom, there's some slots. So this is actually the bottom where the nozzle is, should be pointing towards the bed. They're showing you the belt clips are going to be here. That's where the belts actually go. So look at that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty smooth riding axis. So next step, step 7. So now we're going to need, let's see. Step 7 is this part. It's only one like it, so kind of can't get this wrong. So, okay, so they're saying now flip this thing this way. So the nozzles of the extruder is actually pointing down. And so this is going to slide into the aluminum extrusions. Now, let's see. I'm going to take this part and loosen the nuts on the back of this part just enough to where they don't fall off, because it's going to fit on this side. And this is going to be a belt pulley. And so just as before, the right way to slide these things into an aluminum extrusion is to turn these to slide in like that. You don't want them to turn this way because they'll fall out. You get better friction and tightening when you're doing that way. So we're going to take this and turn it. And there's really only one way this can go, since what's really cool, again, they pre-assemble this. So I'm actually going to do this. So I'm going to take this, slide it here like this. Make sure it doesn't fall off. So there. And the question is, how far does this need to go? I'm going to make an assumption that I'm going to pull this as far away as I can to where both nuts are kind of, that last one, that second one, I want to make sure that it's in the rail because you need that to grip. But I'm going to keep it on the edge for now. I can always slide it later. And I'm going to tighten this one all the way, both of them. Now I'm going to tighten them all. So that's kind of how that goes. Is if you can see that, it's kind of how that looks. Step 8. So this is where we're going to be doing some belts. And we have this belt for the x-axis, which moves the extruder. So when you run a belt, you want to make sure you run this the correct way. And I noticed some people may know this, some people may not know this, but belts have teeth. You want to make sure these teeth actually fit on the gear. And they're showing you how to route the belt. So what's really cool about this type of 3D printer are the rails. The belts fit in the rails of the 3D printer. So it kind of saves some space instead of having them all over the place. They should fit in there pretty good. And I'm going to try to get these in there as best as I can under these rollers. Let's see. It kind of just rolled over it, but make sure you don't smash your fingers here. There we go. So you want to run it along this rail and you want to fit it through. And I'll show you here. You want to come this way and loop it around that motor, come on the bottom side. I'm going to have it there a little bit, and I'm going to come back here and flip it and show you how this goes here. So when you're finished, this belt, the smooth side should be facing out. And we're going to pull this to the center, grab the belt, make sure it's not twisted, of course. And this is probably going to be a little tricky. You're going to get one side in the belt. You're going to get one side in the belt slot here, like that. I got one side here in the belt slot, and I'm going to pull it. Make sure it's not twisted. If it does twist on you, correct it. And so this is where it's going to be a little bit tricky because this belt needs to be tight. You know what? You know what I did? All right. So my belt is actually not fitting. You know why? Because I have this too loose. So here's the trick. We're going to come here, and I believe I dropped my tool. We're going to grab the tool that we need to loosen these bolts. This is what's really cool about this part. So you want to take this part and loosen it and make sure you keep the nuts in there, inside the rail. Now we can fit this belt inside of the slot, like so. See, like that. Now, what you want to do is pull this. This is good for belt tension. So I loosen these bolts, and I have my belt now that's inside mounted here. And I'm pulling back on this, and I'm going to push them out as much as I can while I tighten. That's going to keep your belt tight. So there we go. So that should pretty much do that for that belt on that axis. You see, there it goes. You want to make sure there's no slack. You can't really over tighten this too much, but you want to make sure this is really tight and not loose and floppy. So now we're on step 9, which means basically we're going to assemble this axis onto the machine. But first we're going to go ahead and move everything out of the way. Let's see. I don't want to get any wires. Be very careful here. I'm going to turn it sideways. That shows in the picture and instructions. So the extruder I know is going to face this way. The wires are going to be to the back. And they're saying we need some more parts. So it looks like the filament holder, which is this piece. That's cool, whatever. I'll get that in a second. That's for the next part. So I like it when I see people that put stuff, do not tighten too tight, do not tighten too tight, or do not tighten it too tight on pictures, because it lets you know exactly that. Too many times have I done things or have I put something together and you put it all tight just to find out later you need to loosen it and go back and waste time because the instructions or the manufacturer didn't tell you. Just leave it loose for now till you get everything right. So we're going to have to mount this onto the Z-axis. And the way we're going to do that is line up the aluminum extrusions inside the rollers here. So these aluminum extrusions are going to fit here, and the same in the front. And I'll slide this back so we can see what we're doing. So basically, we're going to make sure this whole piece fits on top of here and slides down while it fits onto the Z-rod. That's what's going to make this machine go up and down, of course. So let's get that, and what we're going to do is make sure that I have this put together right, because, oops, oh wait, I had it right. Make sure you don't do what I did. I almost actually put it together kind of crooked, which would not have been good. So the Z-rod now is going to fit right here. So as you can see, this roller is over here on that side, and on this side is kind of how it fits down. And the Z-rod is actually going to fit through this piece. And let's see if it'll kind of go in there. All right, make sure everything is nothing's catching, nothing's lined up or binding when you're doing stuff like this. And I may actually have to loosen that Z because it looks like I have something a little bit off. So let's see. So up here. So the instructions are telling us by the extruder, which is this nut that's by the extruder plug, which is for the Z. It's a Z nut to catch this rod. It needs to be loosened a little bit. So I'm going to loosen it just a little bit because I'm having a little bit of an issue lining it up. Let's see. There we go. Just a little bit. And I'm just going to put this back. I am not over tightening this at all. What I'm doing here is tightening these bolts barely. I don't want to make it go too much because what's going to happen is you're going to have this thing binding all crazy. So I want to make sure this part over here is lined up properly also while this goes down. And if you're having an issue like this, you see where this was actually binding, then something wasn't right. So make sure you line it up properly, because when this goes up and down, it's really important for your Z. This is where you're going to get a lot of your Z-axis precision. If this is crooked or binding, your prints are going to come out pretty junky. It's always good when you're building a machine to make sure that while you're building it, everything is square, everything is right. And you know, if you need to at this time to adjust some screws, adjust some bolts, go ahead and do that. So this is on there pretty good. We're going to move to the next step. So step 10, we're going to mount the last aluminum extrusion that we have. And this looks like it just basically goes on top. And this is going to be to hold the filament holder. So let's move this over a bit. Whoops. Let's move this over a bit. So it looks like in this, we're going to need two pieces, which are these. We're going to cut these open or open the bag, whatever you need to do. To get this open, looks like some caps for the aluminum extrusions. So let's go back to step 10. We're on step 10. So these two pieces that they're showing you in the step are end caps for aluminum extrusions. What's really cool is that not only does it make them look a little neat, it keeps you from kind of scratching yourself, because this aluminum can scratch you. And this part should just snap in there and fit on there, I'm assuming. So I'm going to take it. There we go. So I got one side and I have the other side. Kind of gives it a little bit of finish, you know, kind of neat looking there. So it's not just some open end, just for looks, whatever. So this is going to require 4 M5 by 25 bolts. And there are 4 holes in this aluminum extrusion that goes in here. And they line up pretty easy. Now what's cool about this is going to line up the Z-axis perpendicular to the machine. Now here's what's really important here. When we were tightening this and actually mounting this earlier, this is what's going to show you is if you had it crooked or not, because this, what I really like, is going to keep it perpendicular. So when this rides up and down, it'll keep that Z-axis from moving. So it should keep it together and line it up. So make sure, again, I'm going to get one kind of started, and then I'm going to hop over to the other side like this. And I'm going back and forth basically from all 4 bolts. I'm going to make sure that when I tighten these, that I don't just tighten one. You want to get one going pretty good, move to another one, kind of get it going, move to the other one. If you've ever changed a car tire, kind of the same concept. But when you're doing bolts like this, it helps you to keep everything evenly tight and straight and perpendicular and parallel, everything square to each other. And I'm not going to over tighten them. I'm just going to put them just snug. So that's for that part. And it looks like we can now move on to the filament holder. Okay, so when you're doing this filament holder and taking it apart, you're going to see some tabs that line up with each other. And if you line up these tabs just right, you can take it apart. And what's going to happen is you're going to fit this into this part, and you're going to line up the tabs again onto that and just twist, and there it is. And we're going to have 2 M5x8 bolts and 2 M5 T-nuts. Now the T-nuts are what slides into the aluminum extrusions once you put them on the bolts. And the way this works, in many other cases they kind of did this for us, but whatever. I guess they can't do everything for us, right? We have to learn something. So we're going to put the T-nuts on here like this. So we're going to put them on there till they're barely on there, because I'm going to have to slide these onto the aluminum extrusion. Now, I can tell you right now, I've already kind of messed up, because this was supposed to slide on before. So I kind of got ahead of myself, I think. Actually, let's see. Maybe I didn't. Maybe we can put them on there and then turn them. Okay, we can. Good enough. I'll go with it. So the way this is going to work is, it looks like they want us to turn this towards the front of the machine or the back. I'm not quite sure here. It seems like, let's see. I want to face this way. I'm going to put it this way. Not a big deal. If we have to move it later, this is nothing but a filament holder. It's not like it's going to change anything, I don't think. So we're going to put the bolts onto this. Let's see, move it so you can see it. And it just kind of, these T-nuts actually fit into the extrusions. Let's move it this side. They kind of show it like it's off-centered, so I'll just follow what I see in the picture. It's always best just to do what they kind of tell you. And if you find a better way later, you can do it. So, kind of have that snug. All right, step 12 appears to be electronics, or wiring, I should say. This is where you want to be really careful. Anytime you start getting to the part where you're doing electronics or wiring, pay very close attention. I don't know anything about this 3D printer, so I'm assuming that they have it labeled for us. Considering that everything else, for the most part, except for a little bit mishaps by me, by dropping screws, dropping tools, and not really paying attention to the instructions, it went fairly well. It's assembled, except for the plate, for the most part. So we're going to now move into the wiring part. So what I'm going to do is get the wires kind of pulled out so I can actually see them, make sure that nothing's caught, make sure everything is free that I can get to. So it appears that we're going to have the extruder wire up and mount up. So we want to make sure we're grabbing the extruder motor. And it looks like they've already prepared the wires for us here, which is really neat. So let's see if they're labeled. Well, yep, okay. So if you look on the orange tabs, they actually have the wires labeled. So X goes to X. The E goes to the extruder. So let's see how we're going to do this. So the X motor is going to be this motor here. This is the X motor. This is your X axis. As this extruder moves left and right, or if you're facing a machine, left and right. So this X that's on this cable, if you can see on this cable, it's kind of hard to see, it's little writing. X is going to plug into the X. There should be only one way that these things can actually go. So you have the big X cable. The big X cable is actually going to plug in to the X motor. And this can only go one way. So you want to be careful that you face the plug the correct way. If it doesn't go, don't force it. You can really mess something up. And so you have another one that has 4 pins on it. That's going to be the extruder. That plugs right into the extruder motor. And you also have the limit switch for the X. This is going to plug into the X limit switch. And it's on this side, and it goes right through here and plugs in only one way. It's a little tough to get your hands in there. So you want to be extra careful that you don't pull on a wire or press on a wire. So there we go. So that's nice and free. And when you're doing any type of wiring, you want to make sure that nothing's being pinched or nothing's getting in the way of the gears or any motors or any friction. And of course we have the Z on the bottom. Now what's cool is the Z is already pretty close to it, and it has Z on it, and it's really by itself. So you kind of can't mess this one up. But you want to make sure it's flipped the right way. It can only go one way. And that's what the tabs, the little ears on the top of the Z, kind of facing towards the top. Be careful when you plug these things in. You don't want to do any damage to the pins. If they don't go in, one of your pins actually may be crooked. You can grab a little screwdriver and fix it. The Y motor appears to already be attached, and so is the heat bed. Now, this appears to be the power supply. Now, the power supply is pretty simple here. Power supply itself, for the most part, is this cable that's by itself. These two ends match. So you can go ahead and plug that in right now, like that. So I plugged in the ribbon cable here on the last side. Now, if it was me, I probably would have went ahead and plugged in this ribbon cable before I actually got to this part, just because it would have been easier. So for the most part, it looks like all of that's plugged in. There is one thing here that I forgot, and that is the Z stop. So you want to make sure you plug in that as well. There we go. Let's see. I had it turned the wrong way. So at this point, I'll kind of want to see what I have and kind of what is not plugged in. And there's one more thing, and that's the power cord. But first, I'm going to do a quick look. It looks like they gave us a little bit of filament to do some tests with. That's okay. I have plenty of filament. It looks like we also have the Ender 3 software and firmware. I'm assuming everything is on it. Probably some models. Usually manufacturers do that. And then we also have this that needs to be mounted, which is going to go into here, which just basically fits in there. Now there's some parts, some nozzles, some extra pieces. Looks like that can go. And the filament's actually going to be fitting into this part and pulling in here. I could probably move this a little bit far over. Let's see, I could probably take this and move it back over this way, because the filament's actually going to feed in here and come this way. So, but for now, I'll leave it as is. So it looks like we have some extra parts, we have some extra tools, and this is going to be the bed plate. Now, this is going to be your flex plate that actually fits on here, and this fits right on the center. Now, they also gave us some binder clips, and with the binder clips, these are going to hold that plate on there. So I'm going to just stick those on there to hold for now. It doesn't really matter right now. I'm not really worried about this part. I want to make sure that I got all the things put together properly, everything wired up properly, and that I'm not really going to have any issues when I go to hit power. You can't put the smoke back in. Just as a tip, if you ever catch something electronics and you see smoke, it's not good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on there for now, just because I don't want to lose them. I don't really care where they're at. I'm just sticking them on there. I don't want to lose them my pieces and go looking for them later when I really need them. Okay, so for the most part, this was it. Other than me fumbling around, like I said, and dropping tools and dropping parts, I mean, this looks like it was it. I can't complain. I mean, that was pretty simple. And I'm sure other people are probably putting this together a lot quicker, but knowing nothing about this machine, not really fooling with anything from Creality, you know, it's pretty good. Good job. So let's make sure this axis is going. Now you got to be careful. Anytime you're messing with electronics, you don't want to get any back feed with signal, because you can, because these things actually will cause a signal to go in reverse. So anytime you're moving stuff like this, just be very careful. I'm just trying to make sure my wires and anything's not really binding. So for the most part, that looks to be done. So the last thing that I'm going to need to do is actually power this thing on. And so they gave you a power cable. This goes on the side here, really simple. I'm going to make sure that switch is off for now. I don't want to have any things scare me. Now, if you haven't checked, and I know I've mentioned this twice already, and so did the instructions, if you haven't checked the voltage on this thing, make sure it's properly set. If you don't have it set right, you're going to be in big trouble. All right, so the last thing I really have to do is just plug this thing on and see what happens. So I'm going to run this, having this switch off, and I'm going to run this to the power. Now I'll switch the power back on, which is good. Now it has the Ender name come up. And so we're going to wait for the LCD screen to come back up. Now the only thing is I didn't plug this USB into a computer. So I'm not quite sure as if I have to upload the firmware. I'm going to assume that they already put that on there. But the thing is they give you this flash drive or this card. This will go in your computer, it's an adapter. And you get, it looks like, what is this? I got an 8 gig card. And this is going to fit into the card slot that's over here. And I'm going to try to put this in to see what's on the card. Assuming there's models. Auto home. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to hit auto home. This should set all my axes, the X, the Y, and the Z. to home position, but since I didn't really calibrate, test anything, the Z switch is on this side, and I'm scared that this is going to crash. So what I'm going to do is have my hand ready when I click this. So it homed in the X, homed in the Y, and now the extruder is actually going to come down with the X motor, and this is going to set itself on the Z. Now, I didn't set this, I didn't check it, so I'm just doing a quick check, and I actually hit this trigger, this end stop, and it stopped. So all 3 axis works, that's a good thing. Now the only thing I didn't check yet is the extruder as far as like temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and try to heat it up now. So I'm on the main menu, I went to prepare, and then I go down to preheat PLA and click. Now I can hear the cooling fan actually fire up, and I can see the temperature readout that this thing's actually heating up. So the 3D printer is heating up just fine, so that looks good. And once it gets closer to print temperature, I'm going to select print from TF to go to my file. That's on the card, and then I'm going to select 20mm cube.g code. And once I select that, the 3D printer has to reach printing temperature. And it looks like it's about 200 degrees Celsius in this case, and the bed's about 60 degrees Celsius. So once it's ready, the 3D printer is going to auto home, which means X, Y, and Z. And then it's going to move up so it doesn't scratch the bed. And at this point, I'm going to watch the nozzle to the bed. I want to make sure that I have plastic coming out, which I do. And I'm looking very specifically for that first layer. I want it to stick to the bed on all 4 corners. Make sure it's nice and flat and not peeling up, and also not jamming into the bed and causing damage. At this point, it looks like everything's kind of coming out nice and smooth and flowing okay and sticking to the bed properly. And looks like that first layer was stuck really good, and the second layer is coming back. And everything looks fine at this point, so I'm pretty satisfied with the first layer. I don't need to stop it. I'm going to let it print to see what happens. And it looks like it kind of peeled up on one corner, but the object's still there. And so far, I like what I'm seeing. So we're going to let this finish and see what happens. As the 3D printer is actually printing, you can see how much time is remaining on the LCD screen. And here you can see it's at 98%. And at 100%, of course, it's finished. And here we go. So for the most part, this 3D printer is not too bad. It's not too slow. And when it's finished, everything goes in a home position. And at this point, you can actually grab the print. But for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with the 3D printer. It prints pretty good. Now, the only thing I hadn't got into yet was calibration and troubleshooting as far as leveling the bed. But for the most part, I don't think it's going to be difficult. So actually, I'm satisfied, pretty happy, and looking forward to using this 3D printer some more. So I do thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something from it. And stay tuned and please follow us for more.